Okay, welcome back everyone to match 2 out of 5 of our nice block of Ori runs today. On commentary again, my name is Gramelos, and I'm joined by Flux. How's it going, dude?
It's going pretty great.
Good. So do you want to quickly introduce the match we have coming up?
Yes, this match is going to be in the Spider Coves group, and it's going to be between Grifs and ICED. Now, these two runners they're going to be doing some fairly different things. What we have here, Grifs is going to be on keyboard and mouse, and he's doing some more tricks than ICED is saying. But what made the main difference between the two is that Grifs will be playing on the PC version on Steam, while ICED will be playing on the Xbox One version of the game, which puts him at a few slight disadvantages, even without taking into account differences between PB times.
That's right, and we can cover some of those differences as the race progresses, But to give a little bit of an overview, the vast majority of runners in this tournament will be playing on PC, but ICED playing on Xbox One has a few disadvantages. Specifically, one, there is no way to toggle the user interface on Xbox One, which means that as opposed to most other runners, ICED is going to have to mash through dialog boxes. It's not going to lose a lot of time, but it'll lose a little bit of time. And as I think you may have mentioned, Flux, Xbox One also generally has slightly longer load times in a handful of places, and the result of that vary will sort of cover it as the race continues. And then I'll throw it back to you, Flux, to just quickly sort of point out the PBs and what we might expect out of this race while I verify that the runners are ready to go.
All right. Grifs currently has a PB of 33:30, which was set about a week ago, while ICED's PB was set just 2 days ago at 43:28. So there's about a 10-minute difference between these two runners and their PBs, which, as we have already discussed, some of that might just be due to the console difference, so the skill difference is not quite as severe as it might seem at first blush. So this could still go either way, especially because Ori runs can go very bad very quickly, very easily.
Well, you're certainly not wrong about that. With that roughly 10-minute difference between their PBs and Grifs just being around. Well, actually, I was going to say Grifs has been around longer. That's not actually true. ICED has been around since about June 2016 compared to Grifs, starting after Stigma's Oreo run back at last AGD2. That's Ori Reverse Event Order, or Oreo.
Yes.
It's interesting. I actually haven't seen ICED around too much. I'm sort of more familiar with Grif's play, and we may already be seeing some very slight load time differences between ICED and Grifs. That's something that we'll continually point out throughout the run. But one interesting side effect of loads being a little bit slower on Xbox One is that many small save and reload skips might not actually save time on ICED compared to Grifs.
Yes, that is true. We'll discuss those as they come into play, but yet Grifs has a slight lead heading down into the area where we pick up sign, and as you can see, we're already seeing that ICED cannot turn off his user interface, which will start having an effect very soon once he comes in to pick up sign, which dialogue boxes and that floating text in the background from the narrator will not be seen as much on Grifs, while ICED will have to mash through dialogue.
I want to emphasize, this isn't like a huge deficit. I would imagine that mashing through dialogue for the entire run is only going to cost ICE a handful of seconds. I will say that if anyone feels like, I guess, freeze framing or reading extremely quickly, you can learn a little bit of the story and lore behind the Force of Nibel, things that we completely skip over in the rest of the speedrun, but mostly it's going to be a little bit of a deficit. Grif's getting through his Frankie fight a little bit more quickly and also gaining an additional, second or maybe two compared to ICED because of those UI changes. So Grif's taking the early lead as he moves back away from sign, going to be taking out a handful of brambles and moving up, trying to take probably a handful of intentional bits of damage to try to damage down to 1 in order to prepare for his ghost door glitch.
Yes, and taking intentional damage this early in the run is, I don't want to say it's a terribly risky strat, because if it's not hard if you know what you're doing, but you don't have a whole lot of health to deal with. But that also makes this ghost door coming up a little bit easier to set up and to manage.
I mean, it's kind of what you said, though. Like, it's not incredibly risky. You're right about that, but just taking damage anywhere can just be spooky because deaths in this game can be so costly. Or it has a very interesting save point system where you can spend energy to make a save point in virtually any location on the ground, which works to your benefit, but also your disadvantage. It means that the player sort of has control over how safe you want to be with your checkpoint system, or you can sort of go balls to the wall and opt to use your energy for additional saves or additional damage. It's a cool system. It's something that I'll be interested to see if other games implement in the future.
Oh yeah, it's definitely very interesting and one of the more unique things about this game as compared to other games of the genre. There's going to be one other major thing that we'll come up to fairly shortly, but we'll get to that when we come to it. That makes this game stand out a lot.
I will say there's one nice thing about ICED not being able to toggle his UI is that, unsurprisingly, even in a speedrun and for experienced runners, it's very nice to be able to see your UI. Looks like ICE took a little bit of damage, so he can't damage boost through this bramble wall. Was able to get through without leveling up too early, which is pretty nice. But for an experienced runner, if you sort of work through the run in the way that we're used to doing, right? If you pick up the health cells and the energy cells that you're expecting and sort of pick up energy and health and make save points and whatnot in the places that you're used to, you don't actually need to look at your user interface, right? Because you sort of just know how much health and energy you have. That said, it's just really nice to know for sure and not have to remember. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would definitely agree. As a fairly new runner myself, it's also fairly helpful to be able to see that, especially when you're still learning the route, because it just takes away a lot of that uncertainty. And even experienced runners, like you see Grifs who managing to turn it on and off just occasionally, just to check on his energy level, check on his health level, check on his possibly even his experience level, although that isn't quite as certain because it's not a fixed number. It's because it just fills up the wheel.
Yeah, that's right. Even just filling up the wheel, though, with experience in this speedrun, you can get a pretty good feel for, like, visually how much experience is represented by a certain slice or certain slices of the pie being filled up. For example, before that intentional level up before wall jump, I could tell you whether or not you will exactly level up based on the experience off the flower. It's something that comes with experience, but we're past that level up. Experience, as always, will continue to be important, but Grifs on the left, still with the lead over ICED, is going to be moving into his save anywhere glitch, a small menu manipulation that's going to let him create a save point after starting the cutscene, thus skipping it. And that's going to bring him into the dark and scary area known as Blackroot Burrows, which we will usually abbreviate as BRB for short.
Yes, Blackroot Burrows is dark and also scary because this area, being an optional area, is not necessarily someplace that you're meant to go right away. You're probably meant to be, you're given the opportunity to prepare, have a little bit more health, a little bit more movement options. So a lot of the things in this area can kill you very quickly if you choose to come in as early as we do in this run. But with a little bit of practice, runners can fairly easily be able to handle that and to avoid damage as much as possible.
I want to ask you a question, Flux. What do you think you're most scared of out of all the awful horrors of Blackroot Burrows? What scares you the most?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, and also as a relatively new runner, I might not have all the experience to be giving the same answers that people who have more runs and better times would be able to give. But I would say that probably one of the scariest things to me about this area is the whole area where you cross along the bottom, where ICED is doing now, because it's just very
I just want to interrupt. ICE did take some damage and fell into the spikes. If he had stayed there just a moment longer, that might have been a death. When you're standing in those spikes, Ori does have a small moment of invincibility after taking damage, like many games. But ICE, just narrowly avoiding death, was able to also survive the insta-kill lasers. Whereas Grifs on the left was able to successfully manipulate his cycles in this dash room. He'll be making his way off to the right, trying to do a quick series of jumps to dodge the laser. Oh my god, that was close.
Oh yes, that was really close. A lot of newer runners will carry the glowing orb a little bit further so that they don't have to worry about the timing, but it's just a little bit faster to drop it there and to just go, which very nice for him to be getting through that as effectively as he did.
That's right. So Grif's still with a nice little lead to start this area. Grif's did a cutscene skip. We call it the Darkness cutscene skip. It's a cutscene that, as we mentioned in the last race, for a long time we thought was completely unskippable, but turns out not to be the case. You just have to sort of, after you set up your save anywhere, you need to wait for a certain length of time, or more accurately, wait until a certain point in the cutscene before making your save. We did see Grifs go for that Darkness cutscene skip. We'll see momentarily whether we see Iced decide to go for it as well. But Grifs with a nice solid lead as he uses his fancy new dash skill to head on towards leeching his froggy friend for a fun afternoon walk.
Yes, and this is one of the other reasons why I was saying that being able to see your experience is fairly nice, because going through Blackroot Burrows, you can check your experience when you do the save anywhere to get into Blackroot Burrows, but being able to just kind of check and have an idea how much experience left you need, how many more slimes you need to kill in Blackroot, can give you an idea of just how to set up this timed level up, which is what Frankie Walk is setting up to do.
And speaking of that timed level up, on the left side, Grifs is going to be killing this Frankie in midair, absorbing the experience using the magnet and opening up this door. Looks like Grifs may have gotten an extra bonus energy. That's only like a 10% drop chance. It's pretty low. Opting to dip into the water, make his way up past the Frankie and dodge the Crushy, opting to not do something known as the Death Glide, where you can get up on top of that Crusher for a very precise dash glide that saves not a lot of time at all. But Grifs did successfully make it through up to the energy cell. We're going to be getting a total of 5 of those throughout the run. Did make a safety save, bit of damage on the way down, is going to make his way into Moon Grotto in a pretty powerful sequence break. So nice job by Grifs to get through. We'll see if Iced can mirror that.
Yes, and as you said, getting that energy drop was fairly lucky. It didn't really account to as much as it might have, but if you had died after opening that door and not gotten that energy, you would have had to do the timed level up again. So being able to drop a safety save right after getting that timed level up can take a lot of pressure off of you on the fairly rough section afterwards, where it's very easy to die quickly and you don't have an opportunity to save.
That's right. I want to direct everyone's attention to the right just as Iced makes it through. Grifs on the left is still in the lead, but I just want to make sure that Iced gets through safe and sound, as far as you can get through safely and soundly in an area that's so spooky. And Iced has a safety save down. He is in the clear. Meanwhile, Grifs is making his way to double jump and is going to attempt some blind movement. The idea with this blind movement, apart from not dying, is to just get up as high on the walls and make as much progress as you can while the camera is locked in place. So we'll see how Grifs can do.
Yes, it's kind of a cutscene skip in a sense, because you don't have to wait that time before you can move, but the cutscene still plays, so you can't see where you're going. So you have to memorize exactly what inputs you need to do to move through that without getting hurt. So it's a bit spooky, especially for newer runners.
That's right. Grif's making his way over to Grotto Skip, a bit of a precise jump that skips the left half of Moon Grotto. I'm going to be honest, Flux, I don't know about you. I haven't actually played the left side of Grotto in quite a long time when I'm not playing the randomizer.
I haven't played it since before I started speedrunning, because I've played the game through casually, I think 3 times, and I did it through there all 3 times. But
I just want to jump in here. Grif's having a shocking amount of issues with his jump. This jump is more precise than it looks. The walls here are very sloped, kind of upside down, and they're very strange. Oh my goodness, Grif's really having a hard time. This is letting Iced catch up quite a bit. Looks like Iced, when he got to his double jump tree, decided to not do the blind movement, presumably just has a little bit of extra safety. Grifs did eventually make it through his Grotto Skip there, but thanks to our stat people, was able to get it 16th try. That's going to lose some of the lead that Grifs had over Iced. So Grifs still with a comfortable lead over on the left side, but I wonder if that'll maybe shake him a little bit.
Yeah, it's Grotto Skip is one of those things where it doesn't take a whole lot of time to retry it, but if you don't get it right away, it can take quite a few tries to get it perfectly, and it's a very small window for where you can actually get that wall jump off and make it up there. It's fairly obvious that the developers didn't intend for you to be able to do that, but as speedrunners, we do it anyway.
Well, Ice was able to get through, still with some trouble, but was able to get through there in fewer attempts than Grifs. Grifs, meanwhile, was working his way back up the Moon Grotto, is going to take a quick stop by this fast travel location for later in the run. That's going to be important for what we call the swamp entry, another sequence break that allows us to skip the Ginso tree escape sequence. So Grifs is through there doing a series of, there's sort of a cadence, a bit of a pattern to moving up these walls using double jump most efficiently. There's also a technique that you can do known as a ninja jumping, but it's something that you don't see many runners going for because it really only saves time if you're basically playing at a task level. And so it's not surprising to see Grifs opting for the more traditional style of double jumps. I'd expect that we'll see the same out of Iced over here.
Yes, even doing the standard double jumps can be a little bit tricky as well. So because there's a particular timing.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Grifs on the left is trying to pull this rock in a very precise way. Did take damage. Grifs right now only has 4 health, and all of these little purple spinners deal 2 damage. So Grifs thankfully was able to avoid a nasty spike ball mace death by these things. Did have to drop back down and pull the rock out a little bit further, so that's just a little bit more of bled time. This is sort of exactly what Iced needs in order to hopefully gain a little bit more time.
Yes, but of course it's also possible the same could happen to him, but we'll see what happens when he gets there.
We will indeed. Do you want to remind everyone what's up with this weird, very tall tree that we're entering?
All right, this is the Ginso tree. This is the first dungeon in the game, both casually and in this run. We will only be completing about, I would say, 2/3 of it before we leave, but we are coming up here to get one very, very helpful ability that we need not only for completing the all skills route, but it'll just save a lot of time and make it a lot easier to get through just in general.
Ooh, Grifs did take a little bit of damage in the second room. Thankfully, he was able to recover it. Since Grifs, excuse me, did get off his wall jump before taking damage, Grifs still had his double jump restored, so was able to save himself in midair without falling in, either dying or losing quite a bit more time. Still deciding to not take a safety save and just sort of go for a quick dash glide through many of these teleporters. Thankfully, the puzzle room is a bit of a reprieve in the next one. So Grifs with a little bit of slop coming through, but still making it through pretty cleanly. If Iced can execute these rooms more cleanly than Grifs, Iced is just sort of, grabbing these seconds that Grifs is sort of trickling away. It'll be interesting to see how this develops.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. There's two ways that Ori runs can lose time, and it's basically either all at once or just a little bit at a time. And Grifs is doing a little bit more of the second in this run, but it gives Ice just a little bit more opportunity to be able to catch up if he manages to avoid that.
Now, one other thing I want to point out, remember that Grifs is playing on PC on keyboard and mouse. That means that Grifs has the luxury of scroll wheel shooting. It's a way to get off these shots faster than, not that it's possible to do on controller, you can do the fast shots on controller as well. It's just more difficult. So Ice, since he's playing on Xbox One, is naturally using a controller. I'll be interested when Ice gets to that first mini boss in the Ginso tree, whether he's going to decide to do paced shots. Oh my god. I'm going to interrupt myself and say that Ice took, I think, 3 damage over on the right side. I'm honestly surprised that didn't result in a death, but Ice is going to have to be pretty careful. Nice double jump adaptation to survive the spikes.
Oh, yes. And Grifs gets a Ghost Store and makes it into the next ability tree, which is Bash, which is one of the most unique and exciting skills in this game. Very different from anything else that I've seen in any other game. It lets you grab onto objects, enemies, projectiles, and just fling yourself in one direction and the object in the other. So you can just kind of use this for a lot of different purposes, and one of the things we mainly use it for is for really fast and effective maneuvering through the world.
That's right. I want to direct everyone's attention over to the right side again. Iced is in that mini boss that Grifs was able to defeat pretty fast using scroll wheel shooting. Iced, as expected, is pacing his shots. The way that shots work in this game, unless you upgrade your basic Spirit Flame, there's sort of a cooldown. You can shoot 2 shots in quick succession, and then you have to wait longer. It turns out that you can get a greater number of shots off in total by pacing them appropriately. And that's what Iced is trying to do, pace the shots as quickly as possible without activating that cooldown. Looks like he's executing it pretty well with the shot pacing and some looked like a little bit worse RNG. Iced may have been losing time on that mini boss. Meanwhile, on the left side, Grifs was able to pull off a successful key dupe. Grab some additional keys, is going to take another intentional death for another ghost door. That death is fine. He'll be moving right across. So Iced is working his way into Bash, and Grifs is working his way to the second mini boss. Grifs still with a very nice lead.
Yes, very, very nice, but as we've said before, anything can still happen. And now Grifs has beaten the second mini boss of Ginso Tree and has reached the teleporter, which he will be using to leave Ginso Tree and not do anything more here for the rest of the run. He is going to Swamp Entry trick now, which lets you skip the final escape from Ginso Tree.
That's right, and I sort of want to continually draw attention to the differences, not only in platform, remember Grifs on PC and Iced on Xbox One, but especially the control scheme with Grifs playing on keyboard and mouse and Iced playing on controller. Just like the mini boss a moment ago put Iced at a little bit of a disadvantage, this Swamp Entry trick is arguably easier for Grifs. It's not necessarily a lot faster on KBM compared to controller, but Grifs playing on KBM has the luxury of easier double bashes. We'll see if he decides to go for double bash methods. Yep, there's one and another one to get the frog way across. I'm guessing that Grifs will also go ahead and hop up on top in order to bait the first shot to break one projectile, bait a second shot for the second projectile, and we'll see a double bash, two double bashes, nicely done with a first try Swamp Entry. That trick is quite a bit more difficult than it looks. So I just want to point out, remember that Grifs was able to do that trick with double bashes. You can do double bashes on controller, but they're really, really hard to do, especially doing more than one in a row. So when Iced gets there, that may be a little bit more difficult for him.
Right, he may use a slightly slower setup, but also a lot more manageable to use on controller. We'll see what he does when he gets to that trick.
That's right. So on the left, Grifs still in the lead, is approaching his stomp skill. This skill is a bit of a ground pound. It's primarily at the moment going to let us break some barricades beneath us and stomp some pegs, and also just travel downward more quickly than falling due to gravity. We're going to see Grifs take a quick damage boost on the spikes. Nice little double bash there. Actually, well, almost skipped the damage boost.
Ooh, that was not the costliest death ever, but a death is still just a little bit more time that Iced can use to try and catch up a bit.
That is true. Iced, I think, at this point will take any bit of time gain, excuse me, that he can get back. I will point out that I don't know whether Grifs or Iced are watching each other. That's something that I probably should have verified in advance. But it's always interesting to me, just like I always like to think about whether runners are nervous before their race, I always wonder whether runners decide to watch their opponent and how that may or may not affect their play.
All right. We are getting confirmation that at the bash tree, Iced is 4 seconds behind his personal best.
That's right. So even though Iced is in second place in this race right now, still a perfectly respectable pace for him. On the left again, Grifs got a very nice Kuro cutscene skip. It's a pretty lengthy cutscene with a very precise bash that can be used to skip it. Grifs is also going to go out of his way for a health cell in this area that we call Spider Coves, or maybe the Spider Water, depending on how you want to talk about it. After picking up that health cell, Grifs is going to rush off to the left and get his 5th energy cell, which will be his final energy cell in the run. And then he has to get back out of here. These spikes in this area that Grifs is getting out of right now using nice double bash technique, those spikes are insta-kill no matter how much health you have.
Yes, and that can make that very spooky even for experienced runners. And as we can see, Iced is using the slightly slower but more manageable setup that I was talking about, and he gets it not first try because he did have a frog death getting in there, but still fairly cleanly for that skip. That can go way worse than it did.
Second try on Swamp Entry is I think totally fine, especially for someone who is Iced is not incredibly new to this game, but his PB is relatively low compared to someone like Grifs. Remember that Grifs' PB is almost 10 minutes faster. So even though Iced is in second place, as we mentioned, he's still pretty nearby his PB, and a second try Swamp Entry, I think Iced will probably be pretty happy with that.
Oh yes, definitely.
Anyway, so Grifs is heading off to the left side. Grifs, in the meantime, had picked up another less useful skill, which is known as Charge Flame. It's supposed to be the second skill that we get in this run, but we actually get it, I think, 7th, based on the route that we go by. Grifs using his nice new stomp skill to stomp down a peg that was previously inaccessible due to not having Stomp, and now is going to move on to the left. Before too long, we'll be seeing another cool trick known as Fast Stompless for Grifs, and I sort of want to keep hammering home the point about this difference between keyboard, mouse, and controller. When we get up to this Fast Stompless trick, which we've described in multiple different matches at this point, Grifs is going to be able to aim his shot using a position of his mouse cursor. So he can sort of grab the spider projectile coming up here at a particular location and aim it by positioning his mouse correctly, whereas Iced is going to have to do it purely based off of angle. So it's not that KBM is necessarily faster. This trick just, again, is sort of arguably easier for Grifs. We'll see how we can pull it off.
Yes, it is arguably easier on keyboard and mouse, and not to mention that one difficulty when it comes to using bash on a controller is that sometimes the dead zone can... Ooh, and Grifs gets his first attempt at Fast Stompless. That should get him in a pretty good position.
On the right side, Iced did miss his Kuro cutscene, which is going to cost Iced additional time since Grifs was able to pull it off very cleanly. So that's going to be a little bit more time loss for Iced. Grifs sort of solidifying his lead. But to direct your attention over to the left again to our first place runner at the moment, Grifs is going to pick up Kuro's Feather, our next skill, and then start a series of movements and tricks that are just really crazy and pretty difficult, to be honest. Grifs is going to grab a skill known as Charge Dash, which lets you turn your dash into a homing attack. Using it to dash at an enemy above him allows Grifs to do something known as a rocket jump. Remember rocket jumps because you're going to see a whole bunch of them. If you ever see Ori sort of rocket into the air very quickly, that's a rocket jump. And then meanwhile, Grifs is going to be taking his first attempt at Sorrow Bash, which is another powerful sequence break. He'll be using Double Bash as usual, just another sort of distinction. We will likely see Grifs going for double bashes, and Iced will almost certainly not use double bashes. It's always fascinating to me to see all these little differences.
Oh yes, and that is definitely fascinating. Grifs had a bit of a bad setup on his first attempt at Sorrow Bash, died on the corner of the spikes, but we'll see how he recovers from that. And
so close.
He made it through, just not as cleanly as he possibly could have, but still very impressive to get Sorrow Bash so quickly.
You know what it was? Is I'm very used to all the spikes in this area. For anyone unfamiliar, deal 4 damage, and many runners at this point in the run will only have 4 health, which means that missing a bash on that bird is instantaneous deaths, right? Because you touch the spikes and they deal as much damage as you have health, and you instantaneously die. I forgot that Grifs took
nice safety save there. Yes,
which is
yes,
what allowed him to survive.
Yes, he took a safety save right when he got up to this area, which was very helpful because he died right afterwards getting that keystone. But safety save means that he lost very little time compared to what he had if he had to go all the way back to his previous save.
Getting word from the truck, by the way, that Iced is still a minute and 1 second, ahead of his PB at Charge Flame. So we may see a coveted race PB out of Iced. I certainly hope that we do.
Yes, that will be very exciting, even with the Grifs still fairly comfortably in the lead.
That's right. Over on the left, Grifs, who did grab his Charge Jump Tree, is going to reuse the save that previously was a safety save. Now we're using it for Save Anywhere. He's going to make a save up near the top and then take a death after buffering a Charge Jump to break that barricade. May be a little bit difficult to see behind the ability menu, and then Grifs is going to go ahead and head up. He's still not closing this ability menu because Grifs, with 1 ability point remaining, is going to spend another point to skip a cutscene at the top. So while Grifs is doing that, I would encourage everyone to watch Iced as he comes up on his attempt at Fast Stompless, which, as we mentioned, Iced is going to have to aim a little bit differently than Grifs did.
That is definitely the case. He just has to rely on angle, and as I had said before, had tried to say before, but didn't actually finish saying, Iced's stream was getting a little bit frozen there, but fortunately it looks like it's recovered somewhat.
I see what you did there. Iced frozen stream.
I actually didn't even think of that until you said it. That's
just the production value we have in this tournament, ladies and gentlemen. We not only have the production value, we have the jokes to go with it. Looks like Iced unfortunately did miss his Fast Stompless attempt. He's going to head up and give it another shot. Thankfully, didn't get something that we call Sad Celis, which I potentially lost more time. Looks like Iced actually deciding to not go for another fast stompless attempt is going to go do the intended method of getting up above the rocks and using the stomp skill, which is a perfectly legitimate approach to missing it. If you continually attempt fast stompless, you might end up losing more time than just doing it the intended way. So I think Ice deciding to just sort of get it out of the way and continue on to bigger and better things.
Yes, that might be a fairly safe strategy. I noticed at the beginning of the stream that he did not list fast stompless as a trick that he was planning to attempt, so he might have tried to learn it recently and attempted it once, but he might not have been comfortable going for it more than once. So fairly safe strats there, but well, good thinking on his part. I
want to sort of interrupt again. We're having some very important developments. Grifs has now taken not one but two pretty costly deaths in Misty. So Grifs still with a very sizable lead, but is just sort of losing time due to some of these deaths. Meanwhile, Iced, despite not going for fast stompless and making it through, Iced not only missed his first attempt at fast stompless, but he missed a very important ability cell, and so we'll see how that affects Iced's run going forward, or whether Iced is aware of it. It's possible that Iced maybe had sort of tunnel vision on the fast stompless trick itself and maybe even forgot. And it looks like Iced also took a death despite being, I thought he was high enough to get through that Sarabash.
Yeah, it looked like he just wasn't high enough and couldn't recover it, but I wasn't sure if he had forgotten to get that ability cell either, or if I had just missed him going up to getting it sometime. But
sorry, please continue.
Yes. Well, yeah, he is. It's I just see where it says Ice go back, but no, it's where it's what I was saying before is one thing that controller can sometimes do, especially especially probably on the Xbox version where you can't do slight modifications to the thing like you can on PC. Sometimes you will have if you're trying to do a trick known as a bash glide, where you release your directional input after angling your bash to go a little faster. Sometimes releasing the analog stick, it'll flick back in the opposite direction and change the direction of your bash right at the last moment, which is something that we sometimes call a trash bash, and it can really mess you up if it happens at the wrong time and in the wrong direction. So that also makes bash tricks a little bit more unforgiving on controller if you're not doing them
Iced
perfectly.
On the right side, Iced is through his Sarabash, took plenty of attempts at it, but was able to get through cleanly. Iced does have more than 4 health, so Iced, since he can technically do double bashes, but they're very, very difficult. I don't know of any controller runner who consistently goes for a double bash strat in most parts of this run.
Oh yeah,
but Iced was able to make it through doing a damage boost because he has enough health to survive one of those shots, made it through, made a safety save, and was able to successfully rocket jump off of the frog as well, making his way up, deciding to not create a safety save before this area of some very tricky gliding sections where all of these spikes will either directly kill you, depending on how much health you have, or at least heavily damage you. Meanwhile, Grifs on the left, despite some early deaths in Misty, has made it through the second mini-boss, sort of killing some time with some stomp cancels while the door is opening. Yes. Grifs is going to decide to not pick up these orb. Well, he's not going to decide to. That's just the roots. Grifs is going to skip this orb and continue back off to the right his next destination is the final skill of the game, which is known as Light Grenade. We'll be getting to that before too long, and Iced has made it to charge jump too.
Yes, and for getting the Light Grenade, Grifs will be heading back into Blackroot Burrows, which we went to at the very beginning of the game to get Dash, and then we just kind of left and didn't come back until the very end of the game. And the main reason for that is Light Grenade is somewhat useful, but mainly for very situational things, and it's just not worth it to get it until the very end of the run before going to Mount Horror to finish it off.
That's right. So Grifs is going to take a quick intentional death, damage boosting in advance to make sure that he can take this death pretty shortly. He's going to rekindle the save after pulling the lever and moving on. He's going to make his way down then, quickly approaching the next area. Looks like, to be quite honest, I missed what happened to on Iced's screen.
I think I know what happened. I think he finally realized that he missed that ability cell when he went to go level up.
Is Iced going the intended route? This is not something we've seen in this tournament so far. If it was not obvious, the Terra break trick that many runners decide to go for is not it's not something that the developers intended. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use charge jump to break some of these barricades from the bottom and sort of go around a tricky section. And I guess Ice decided that rather than going for a backup, maybe something like Frog Juggle, I'm not even sure if Ice is maybe aware of many of these backups.
Right.
Ice is deciding that it would be maybe faster and easier to just go around the intended way.
Right, especially because especially because the optimal route has you making using two level up skill abilities, two skill points at this point of the run, one to do Terror Break and one to skip the Sunstone cutscene, which is a fairly long cutscene. And I think when he went to do his Terror Break, he realized that he only had one skill point and could not do both. So that might be why he is going this way around.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to just have everyone continue looking at the right side. Ice just finding himself in a very difficult situation. The way you're supposed to move through this area casually is to use Climb, which is an area that you don't pick up until Misty Woods, in order to climb onto the wall and then charge jump sideways to break a barricade. Ordinarily, when you're playing the game casually, you cannot even get into Sorrow Pass before you've worked your way all the way through Misty Woods and the second dungeon, which means that you'd be guaranteed to have Climb when you get here. But because we've done Sorrow Bash, Ice does not have Climb. Now, with 5 health, it is possible to do a pretty precise and pretty difficult damage boost in order to break the that same barricade with a regular charge jump rather than a Climb wall charge jump. But it's very, very difficult to do, and Ice actually doesn't have 5 health and may not even be aware of this backup. This is a tricky situation that Ice has found himself in.
Yes, and although, he is opting to reload a save, it looks like, using a backup save. Missing that ability cell, and I see what he's doing here. He grabbed this ability cell here and is now, rather than going through the intended way, is opting to just retrace his steps and go back to Terror Break, which, considering how awkward the rerouting had to be, considering he missed the ability cell at Fast Stompless, that is fairly good spontaneous rerouting on his part. That very nice adaptation to unforeseen circumstances.
On the left side, Grifs has made his way all the way to the final dungeon, has all 11 skills, is taking his 4th attempt at door up, wasn't able to get it in the first 4 tries, is going to continue. Remember that this is a 1-frame trick at 60 FPS, was able to get it, I think that was 5th try. And Grifs is going to make his way into the final escape. So barring a really bad catastrophe, Grifs is probably going to take this victory. Grifs just has to make it through this entire area. Remember that due to the swamp entry sequence break, all the water in the world is still poison, which means that, as always, Grifs has to make it through pretty much this entire escape sequence and take no unintended damage. And there is a lot that can damage you in this escape, isn't there, Flux?
Yes, there's a lot that can damage you in this escape because it's pretty much the final challenge to beat the game, and what makes it particularly difficult is there is not a single way you can take damage in this escape that will currently leave you with enough health to be able to make it through the swimming section.
Speaking of that swimming section, Grifs is coming up to it right now. All the while that Grifs is in the water, he's going to be taking 1 damage per second. Was able to get through nice and clean, doing a charge jump to despawn Kuro, and then Grifs is going to make his way up the wall, bash off of these flaming boulders, and position himself on the wall in a pretty precise location to set up a grenade jump. This is another 1-frame trick. Thankfully, with each missed attempt, you can just sort of get back on the wall and give it another shot if you want to, and while you still have energy. This final grenade jump saves enough time that it's generally worth it to give it, I don't know the exact number of attempts, but to give it several attempts. And looks like Grifs is actually out of energy, so he's just going to have to finish off normally. Maybe Grifs won't be too pleased with that, but Grifs is still definitely going to be taking the victory. It's just going to have to hold right for a hair longer than he would have to if he had successfully gotten that grenade jump. So GG to Grifs.
Yes, good game to Grifs. Even without that final grenade jump to cap off the run, that was still very impressive run, and he will be very solidly taking the win, as ICED is making his way through Misty now, managing to reroute after that costly routing error. But once again, good adaptation, because anything can go wrong in an Ori run, and for something to happen like that, that was a very nice recovery on his part, all things considered.
I mean, it's just always rough. Even speedrunning this game for a while, sometimes, like I mentioned, you sort of get tunnel vision, and you think to yourself,
like,
I need to get fast stompless, and it can be pretty easy to forget other things, and especially on the fly, it can be very difficult. You get so hyper-focused on your execution, sometimes you forget about the basics. You're just so used to having the energy and ability cells when you need them, because that's in the root. You're not used to having to think on the fly.
That's the thing. It's like that's one thing that can be fairly difficult for a lot of speedrunners, is just having to be able to think quickly and to improvise like that, because you just following a route for most of the time, and it's when something doesn't go as planned that you have to really try and figure out what to do next. And yeah, it's just sometimes you get that tunnel vision. You think, okay, I already got that ability cell, even though you didn't. It happens to the best of us. So, and now.
Well, on the left side, then, Grifs has taken first place, finished off with a final time of 37:08. GG to Grifs. Will be continuing to pay attention to ICED as he continues working his way. He has made it to climb that skill 10 out of 11, so 1 to go, which is going to be Light Grenade, way down in the depths of Blackroot Burrows. Before we can get there, we need to finish the maze-like section, which is Misty Woods.
Yes.
So we'll be doing a series of charge dashes, a series of rocket jumps. There's all kinds of movement tech in this area.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why a lot of runners consider Misty Woods to be one of their favorite places to go in this run, because even as difficult as it can be, you have pretty much all the movement options by this point in the run, and you have charge jump and charge dash and all that, which you typically wouldn't necessarily be needing to use to get through here, but it can just make it very quick and very fast. Very quick and very fast, yes, same thing. But it's when you watching a high level runner get through Misty Woods is just quite an experience.
It absolutely is. Now, as you mentioned earlier, one interesting side effect of ICED playing this game on an Xbox One is that his UI is just perpetually on, which means that as opposed to most runners, you can actually always know what your health and energy is. All of these spikes in Misty Woods deal less damage than the ones in Sorrow. The ones in Misty only deal 3 damage compared to the 4 in Sorrow. But right now, ICED is sitting at 2 health. Right after Climb, ICED actually took damage down to 1. So ICED is, I'm sure, very aware that it has to be very careful. It's pretty easy to take deaths, although in ICED's defense, he's also been taking a fair number of safety saves, which I think is a very smart decision at this point in the run, to sort of make sure that you get through cleanly. You'll save a lot more time by just having clean play and not dying than by using all of your energy for additional charge dashes.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one thing. It's you kind of that's one way that even when you're following the route, Ori runners will have to kind of be able to play on the fly, is just by knowing when to take a safety save. And one other thing is, safety saves are useful for more than just for saving your game, but they also can give you a little bit of extra health with the regroup skill that you do need to get in order to get air dash and charge dash. So taking a safety save can not only make it so that you don't have to go back as far as if you do die, but make it so that you are less likely to die in the first place. So taking smart safety saves at the right times can be a very effective way of making sure that you don't lose time to deaths in this part of the run.
That's right. So ICED is still finishing up, has made his way past the dual mini-bosses in Misty Woods, and is getting over to Blackroot's Burrows. In the interest of time, we're actually going to bring in Grifs, our first-place winner here, a little bit early to do an interview, and looks like Grifs is in here now. Grifs, congrats on your win, man.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah.
Hi. So I have some questions. You had a handful of deaths in that run, especially in like early Misty Woods. Did you feel that phased you at all, or I guess what was your overall attitude as you went through that?
I don't know why I assumed I could see dash there, so I tried to see dash and cancel at the same time. Didn't work out. Second time I did Misty was because the charge jump didn't go off. I don't know why, and I just ran at the spikes. It was fine. I didn't take it that serious, the deaths.
Well, I mean, you're able to take the victory. That's what matters. Are there any areas of the run that you think you'll be particularly practicing for your upcoming races, or do you think the mistakes today were more sort of flukes, you know, rather than like a systemic problem to fix?
Probably Misty on mid game. Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even as an experienced runner, you can never practice Misty quite enough.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Flux, do you have any questions for Grifs as we're sort of watching Ice make his way towards Light Grenade?
You asked all the questions that I could think of off the top of my head, so.
I have a question for you, Grifs.
Yep.
How was your Valentine's Day?
Hashtag forever alone.
You didn't spend it. You spent it with Ori friends.
Yes.
Yep. It is easy to think of Valentine's Day as purely about romantic, but there are other kinds of love too to think about sometimes.
For instance, Sigma and Ella Jiminy have love for Frankies for some weird reason. Anyway, congrats, Grifs. I guess if you want, you can sort of hang out with us here while we watch Ice. Ice has made his way out of the Light Grenade area. He's getting into the boulder area that we generally might call the Indiana Jones area, or the Raziel No area, based on a meme from the last tournament. The point is that if you hear either of those terms referring to the boulder area, Ice grabbed an additional health cell and then is going to go ahead and teleport away back to Thornfelt Swamp in preparation of heading over to Horror.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. And once you have all these skills and can make your way to the final area of the game, it might seem like you're pretty much in the clear, but there are still quite a few things that could go. Ooh, he's going for a little bit of a grenade jump there.
And got it.
Yeah.
Got the grenade jump, didn't get the angle perfectly, but you know what? It's the attitude that matters, and it's the speed that matters. Remember that each grenade jump is actually a one-frame trick. You have to throw a grenade and jump the frame later, unless I messed that up. I'm an ore runner. I should probably know what the inputs are. Oh, no! Ice took a death. Thankfully, he had a safety save not too far back. Ice has been making some pretty solid safety saves throughout this whole thing, which I think is impressive. The death that Ice did take was due to an energy enemy that can sort of fire its laser in different directions based on your position. But Ice is quickly coming up to Door Warp, and I want to point out that because Ice is playing on Xbox One, the loads throughout this entire run have been different. Like, if you've been paying close attention, you may have even seen sort of the camera get stuck in certain locations, especially in the Blackroot Burrows.
Yeah, Blackroot Burrows, there are a few places where I noticed that the camera just kind of stuck, but he was able to get through pretty effectively, even with some blind movement there. So
that's
very
right.
Nice on his part.
So this Door Warp, there's a certain timing to it because you have to press up on the frame that the game loads. Since Xbox loads more slowly, Door Warp can actually be a little bit different on Xbox than it is on PC. So it's a hard enough trick anyway, frame perfect trick in a game like this, and Ice has to do it a little bit differently. You can actually see the little differences in loading time. Like, each time he exits to the menu, it sort of takes it a second to show up. And this game is timed real time. So you know that is taking a little bit of time each attempt. Looks like Ice has taken, I believe, 3 attempts at it so far. Is just going to sort of keep at it, exiting and reloading and trying to press up to enter the door on the frame that the game loads. Didn't get it 4th attempt either. Not surprising to see some issues with this trick. It's pretty difficult, as I'm sure all of us can attest to.
Yes, it's definitely a surprisingly difficult trick. It's kind of one of those things where the input is fairly simple. You just press up at the right time, but because that time is frame perfect, it's a lot more difficult than the inputs make it seem.
As always, timing is key. Pressing the buttons is not the hard part. The hard part is pressing all the buttons at all the exact correct times. If you just do that perfectly, you'll have guaranteed world record, easy peasy. And with that, Iced is through. That was an 8th try Door Warp. Got the legendary sub 9th try Door Warp. Nice job, Iced.
Nice job.
And Iced is heading into the final escape, mashing through a little bit of dialogue. You're finally gonna, for once, get to see the water swimming section with UI on, so you can sort of verify what we've been talking about in the tournament, which is that while you are in the poison water, you take 1 damage per second. We'll see if Ice can get through this first try. As always, Ice has to dash off to the right, getting as much speed as he can while avoiding all the insta-kill lava, all the falling boulders. It's funny, the lava in this escape sequence is insta-kill, but effectively, everything's insta-kill, right? Because once you've taken damage, you're going to die in the poison water, just guaranteed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where pretty much any runner, it's like, because you have that strict health requirement that you need to be getting through here without taking damage even to the slightest thing, you pretty much just find a way to die and restart the escape as quickly as possible. One thing that is fortunate, though, is that starting the final escape completely refills your health and energy, so you don't have to worry about not going into the final escape with perfect health to be able to get through it.
Ice has made it through the poison water, though, having no issues. Is going to set up a grenade jump. First try. And I have to say, Ice has been, like, muffin levels of consistency with his grenade jumps. Dare I say it? More consistent. Muffin, if you're here, I apologize. I have nothing but respect for you. But Ice has better grenade jumps. Okay, so Ice is going to be holding right with a successful grenade jump that has to hold right for a shorter length of time than Grifs does. Just has to mash through a little bit of dialogue. You're going to see Naru, a character that we've barely seen so far, get up and just sort of waddle off to the right, and then we will have time for Iced.
Yes, and that cutscene looked a little bit weirder there than it usually does when you factor in not being able to turn off the UI. You're mashing through text boxes while the cutscene was still going. It's not something that you usually see in this game, but we do have time for Iced. He finished the run at 47:43.
Congratulations to both of them. Grifs, you're still in voice chat with us, right?
Yes.
I have another question for you. Do you have any particular strategies for safety saves in your future matches? Maybe I was misreading the situation. I kind of thought that I saw a fair number of safety saves from both of you. Were those planned, or did you just sort of adapt on the fly?
Because I took damage, like 4 damage in Dorito Cave. I saved before in missed the entrance, but in like I had missed it there where the usual saves I do. So it's pretty much because I don't do that much C dashing. I just save. So energy management isn't that important. Yeah,
it is. Well, you can see our Spider Co's group here. With that win, Grifs is 2-1, still with a handful of matches to go yet in that group. But that's going to do it for this match. Stick around, though. We do have another Ori match coming up, like right after this one. It's going to be Hobbs versus Sonic Buster. Hobbs has been very active on our restreaming side and also is a very, very talented commentator. And best of all, Hobbs wrote the replay feature. So for anyone watching is thinking, oh my God, how did they add replays? I have no idea, but Hobbs does. So make sure you stick around and watch that match. On commentary, this has been Grimelios and Flux. It was nice commentating with you, dude.
Nice commentating with you as well. And a very fun race to watch.
I agree. Grifs, congrats on your win. And Ice, even though you're not here, congrats on finishing out.
Yep.
We're going to take another short break before the next match.